And we are back with another week of the Penn State pregame show, sponsored by Modelo, your official import beer of Penn State football. I'm Jay Skippin, and I'm here with Christian Hackenberg. And, of course, yours truly, Brian Tripp, is on the field over at Ohio State at the Shoe. Welcome, guys. How we feeling, Christian?
Jay, couldn't be more excited to be here with you, man. You look real spry this morning.
Yeah.
Real happy, real fired up to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to be here, too.
I'm feeling great. It's a little nippy this morning in Philly. Obviously, as you guys can see, we got a little bit of a background change here. We're here at Old City Tap House in Philly, absolutely enjoying ourselves. We appreciate them having us here, and we are ready and excited to talk about this big football game today, obviously facing the number one team in the nation in Ohio State. Today, they are undefeated.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be quite the challenge. Not, I think, what everyone expected heading into the season. We've covered all that, and we're going to talk a lot about how we got here, what we expect out of them. But the Buckeyes definitely look like they're firing on all cylinders right now, and a team that's ready to take a shot at a repeat.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think, coming off of a bye week, Terry Smith just being elevated to the interim head coach, there's a ton surrounding Penn State. It's a very emotional building right now. They're heavy-hearted, a ton going on. Really tough to kind of exclude the noise and get the noise out of the building. But I think if there's one guy who can really get the job done and get these guys focused, refocused on our identity and who we are as a team and kind of get back to that, I believe that's Terry Smith.
Yeah, I mean, Terry's done a great job. You listen to him just talk to the media. You talk about the fresh takes and the fresh perspective that he brings, which has been really, really good. And then now the challenge of, put yourself in Terry's shoes, right? That swift change, having to go play a game in Kinnick the week after. Now you have a bye week. You have Halloween. You have a little bit of some camaraderie even within the coaching staff. Bringing the family around, trick-or-treating in the building. You saw some of that stuff. So I think this week and the bye week heading into this game was probably the best thing for him in terms of being able to really get his grips on everything that goes into being the head coach, because that transition wasn't easy for him too. You know what I mean? We talk about how tough it's been for the guys in the building, but talk about the guy that has to go and now be the captain of the ship.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think he's done a fantastic job. And you and I've touched, a brother of ours, guy who played here, gets it, understands the Penn State DNA, which we're going to dive into later as well. I just can't be more pleased with how he's presented everything and represented the program up until this point.
Yeah, and I think it's also been a bit different as well. The reality is he's gone into these press conferences and he's been, quite frankly, very honest with us in a way that I think is very different than we are used to seeing. We're used to seeing Coach Franklin go up there and normally give the politically correct answers, the coach speak and things of that nature. But the reality is, Terry's gone up there and he's been very transparent in each and every press conference from the time that Coach Franklin got fired to, last week's loss against Iowa in that post-game press conference. So it's a very fresh and different change. It's a different experience so far, but I'm enjoying it, and I think it's necessary. Just like you said, the transparency. I think there's a level and sense of urgency for absolutely everyone in the building right now. Obviously Terry was asked if he, would consider taking the head coaching job, and I think the reality is he's not only auditioning maybe to be the next head coach, but auditioning maybe to still be on this staff next year. As you know, guys come in, new head coaches come in, and they bring in all of their guys. So I think there's a lot of pressure on everyone right now. And I think Terry's, like you said, has done a great job of really handling everything. But the reality is this week, it's going to be a really, really tall task. ESPN giving us 12% chance to win this game against Ohio State. So big challenge.
Yeah, it's an 18.5-point spread. It's going to be a tough challenge. But you and I were joking about this. This is one of those games where Penn State, from a talent standpoint, it's not a not talented team.
Yeah.
And that's the dangerous thing is when you have an animal kind of backed in a corner. And I'm not, alluding to anything or being fortuitous, but if Terry can rally these guys to play tough and competitive ball, I think it can be a competitive game. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be, this massive earth-shattering upset, but I think it can be a competitive game if these guys have the right mindset coming into it. With that being said, though, as we've seen up until this point, this team tends to lose those gotta-have-it type situations, getting off the field on third down, just things that really, really good football teams do.
Yeah.
We haven't done up into this point throughout the season, so it's very hard for me to say that all of a sudden there's going to be a light switch post-bye week, post-Terry Smith's, injection of different energy and different focus into the program, that's going to happen this week. Very, very tall task to say. But what I will say is again, as I've always said, heading into these games, I'm just curious to see if these guys have the care factor. Does it matter to them? Do they really still care about putting a really good product on the field? And if they do that, again, I think this can be a competitive football game. I think Ohio State eventually runs away with it, but you never know what happens. Ball could bounce one way or the other, and that's one of those dangerous situations. This could be a trap-ish type of game for Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think to go from where we were to where we are now, it's easy to hang it up. It's easy to throw in the white towel. It's easy to have a demeanor as if you had your tail hanging in between your legs from 4 straight losses when you started off the season, number 2 in the country with hopes of, winning a national title. That's the reality. It is not an easy situation at all. And I think going against this Ohio State team that, we'll dive into exactly who they are a bit later in the show, but they're not making a lot of mistakes right now. They've got a ton of talent. They're very well coached, not heavy penalized at all. They're just doing everything right. They're really doing everything right now. And it'll be tough. It's going to be a tough task for this Penn State team to overcome. I want to bring Brian Tripp in here and get his opinion on today. Brian, how are you?
It is a great morning here in Columbus, Ohio. Great to see you guys there in the city of brotherly love this morning. But sun is up and temperatures should be around 50 degrees at kickoff here. A really, really nice Saturday for football. And I'm just going to echo some of the things that you're both talking about right there. I think it's Terry's personality and his ability to hold guys accountable. And look, it is a tough spot. He talked about it going into the Iowa game. And I know you can see how sunny it is from up here in the broadcast booth. But you can tell that this is a guy who had to manage a lot more than just football going into that Iowa game. It's the emotions. It was a real emotional day, the Sunday where James Franklin was fired, and then throughout the week trying to navigate not just with the players, but the staff who now has its livelihood on the line. What's the next step for them? And as Christian hit on to open the show today, I think it's that bye week. Now you have a chance to reset, focus, figure out your personnel. There are some schematic things that Penn State is going to have to do today against what is the best defense in the country. Ohio State's only allowed 41 points in their first 7 games, and you can go up and down the roster and identify key players. And we still think this is a matchup game. Ryan Day talked about that this week. Penn State, they still are a team that has a lot of talent. But it's up to Terry Smith to hold that talent accountable and maximize it where there are distractions right now. I think a big part of his job and what he's done really well is being honest with them, challenging his team and motivating his team, and having to do it in this new era, which is an incredibly difficult era because you have the portal, you have decisions. What about the NFL? And ultimately, these guys need to still go out, and the staff still needs to go out and prove themselves for what that next opportunity may be, whether it's at Penn State or whether it is somewhere else. So I think that's been the greatest challenge for Terry to this point. We'll dive in throughout the show about what makes this matchup challenging for Penn State. There are a few avenues you could start to see, like Ohio State hasn't run the ball well the last 2 games. They're coming off a bye as well. But obviously this is a significant challenge coming in here to Columbus today. Should be a great day for football, but I'm glad you guys are doing the heavy lifting. I'm just going to kick my feet up and sit back and listen in.
Awesome. We appreciate that, Tripp. And, you mentioned something that is obviously the storyline of this year. Coach Franklin is fired right now. There are a ton of distractions going on right now. This is just one of the parts of the noise that is really hard to kind of exclude and get out of the building. But the reality is, we've got to talk about it. We got to talk about who we think is going to be the new coach, who is going to be the new leader. And Terry's one of the guys that has to focus these guys to make sure they're not checking ESPN every 10 minutes to figure out what new names being discussed and talked about. But we're going to sit here and we're going to talk about it today. And it starts with Matt Rule.
Yeah.
It starts with Matt Rule and the fact that he just got an extension over at Nebraska. A lot of people, a lot of guys really believe that he was going to be the next coach. Obviously, a ton of PSU ties and PSU roots, played here in the 90s. Well, Nebraska must have heard that noise, and they shored that up very, very quickly. 2-year extension for Matt Rule.
Yeah.
Where does that leave us?
Listen, I think it's interesting. You're seeing that happen. Kurt Cignetti gets the big extension, right? It's the gamesmanship of now this coaching carousel that's been extended. Realistically speaking, you got Florida, you got LSU, you got us, Virginia Tech. There's a handful of programs that have a history of winning that are open and that could be enticing for a lot of folks. So you're going to now start seeing people have to protect their own if they feel really good about things. And obviously being completely transparent. Loved Matt Rule. Have a bunch of anecdotal personal ties as to why I think he would have been a great guy here. But good for him, happy for his family, and happy for his future prospects at Nebraska. It's a great place as well. But with that being said, for me, again, going back to what I've said about this coaching search from the beginning, I say it has to be somebody who gets Penn State. It has to be somebody who understands the history, tradition, and culture. It also has to understand what type of kids this place needs in that building.
Yeah.
And ultimately, all that ties to winning and getting over the hump and going win a national championship, right? So there's this weird, again, concoction that you need out of somebody. I thought really checked a lot of those boxes. There were some that were question marks, being completely transparent, but that's going to be the case, I think, with anybody that you bring up.
Yeah, the reality is whether you like Matt or not, or believe that he should or shouldn't have been the next head coach, the reality is he was up there in terms of the options. Like you said, he checked a ton of boxes. He's a Penn State guy, all those stuff, knows all about it, knows the type of kids, knows the type of culture that we have here at Penn State. So I think regardless, it is a loss, even if he's not the guy who would have ended up being hired. So it's really about, okay, who's next? There are names like Brian Hartline, for example, Ohio State's now offensive coordinator, long time, receivers coach, who has obviously brought in a ton of talent into that Ohio State, team, and what he's done with the development of wide receivers, which is a position that, if we're being really honest, in the past few years, I think Penn State's been lacking a bit.
Yeah, and first thing to start off with Brian is you look at his playing career at Ohio State, his coaching career at Ohio State. He's been around a lot of national championship winning cultures, and it's one thing that I've talked about for a long time. I'm very close with Joshua Perry, who played at Ohio State, played against us when he was up there, linebacker, and some of the things that we just talk about is what's it like in that building? Like, what is the standard?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because I think Penn State has a standard that you and I understand very well. It hasn't been national championships consistently. It's been very, very good. But I've asked him about that, and there's something that unique that happens up there. There's an expectation under Urban Meyer that he played for that was just high stress, high pressure, but it got the best out of you. And it was constantly pressing that expectation, and not like a fluffy way, but in a reality way, and very business oriented in that sense, trying to maximize the potential of each of these players. So to your point, like Brian Hartline's been around that. He's seen that, and he's doing a great job from an offensive standpoint this year, taking the reins as the OC. You're seeing his skill set, his brain, his actual football brain, on display, which is really cool. And, you look at the youth, just a young guy, very motivated, to your point, recruits very, very well at some key positions for us. Yeah. And he recruits in the same area as us. You know what I mean? A lot of the kids that you see are looking at Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. We're competing for the same kids. So he has this tie to kind of our cultural roots of players in our own backyard.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. And I also just, in general, just because I've done both sides in terms of playing for a coach that played at a high level and playing for a coach that didn't, I think, there's a special level of connection, I think, as a player that you have with a coach that played at a high level, with a coach that's been in your shoes, with a coach that's played in the NFL and things of that nature. I think it brings a special attention to detail for the players when that coach is speaking, when that coach is doing his things and things of that nature. Obviously, he's young. He's got a level of moxie and swagger to him. Like you mentioned, he's been around a ton of winning. He knows what standard looks like. He knows what culture and what instilling culture looks like over a long period of time, which are all traits that I think are really synonymous with Penn State and kind of what we want as a culture here, with our program.
Yeah, culture shared value over time.
Yeah.
And Ohio State has slightly different. We have certain things, and there's elements of growth involved in all of that, which is very important. And Brian Hartline, to me, to kind of put a bow on him as a candidate, obviously a guy who doesn't have head coaching experience. Neither did Dan Lanning. Neither did all. So you can, yes, 100%, right?
Yeah.
But that's the risk. At the end of the day, when you're drawing the line of like, okay, risk versus reward, laying it out on a sheet, having the conversations via interviews, other people that are going to vet the process. That's one of the ticks against him is has never truly driven the ship from that side of things. And there's something to that, as you know, that goes into being the guy across the board. That's a tough challenge.
Yeah.
But he brings a lot on the other side that leads you to believe that he probably can do that job at a high level. So, for me, Brian Hartline's always been the one. I think he's going to bring a lot of excitement if he comes in to the program. But the question mark is, can he be the face and handle everything that goes with that in a different, unique style of college football and rules and regulations with, NIL agents, all this other stuff, right? And that brings up a unique thing. Like, I think a lot of these guys are great candidates, but I think a lot of these guys also need an elite GM, someone who can come in and manage a roster, manage the agent talk, so that whoever it is can come in here, focus on football, focus on building a culture of high expectation with tough, disciplined, hard-nosed, blue-collar kids.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think for me, if Brian Hartline were to get hired, I personally would feel really good about that.
I would too.
That's just how I personally feel. I really like the guy. I like what he's about. I like what he's built. I like, just everything about him. So that's obviously a name to keep an eye on. Another name to keep an eye on is Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss's head coach right now. He's one of those guys. He's a dude who's got moxie. He's got swagger. You hear him in the press conference. You see him post-game. He's getting into it with the opposing opponent's players, with their players, and, talking trash and things of that nature. Like, you love to see that out of their head coach. Like, that's the kind of stuff that gets me really, really fired up. Yeah. So I like Lane. He's got that young energy. Everywhere he's been, it just seems like he's injected that young, fun, exciting energy into programs, and obviously he's doing it this year over at Ole Miss.
The one thing I will say that Lane brings that I do like, and same thing with Brian, is I think we need an offensive-minded guy in here, right? Yeah. I think this place is going to attract defensive talent. There's a level of history that comes with that. I think it's important that they bring the right guy in on the defensive coordinator side.
Yes.
To oversee that. But I think college football today, what puts butts in seats, what fires up fan bases is lighting up the scoreboard, dynamic offense. Yep. So I think an offensive-minded head coach is probably the right way to go. That's obviously Lane. He does that everywhere he goes. The issue with Lane, and I think the hard part is, it's going to be really tough to pull him out of the SEC. Yeah. Guy loves to fish.
Would be a culture shock for him for sure.
I think it's going to be really tough to pull him out of the SEC. And now with LSU also being open, you kind of look at where he's been, what he's been familiar with. Everyone talked highly about the Florida job. There were some things going back and forth about how, assurances towards Ole Miss about that. But I think LSU is a completely different animal. And that's going to be one of the unique things with Lane is, like, will his personality fit a Big Ten culture, or is he going to stay where he's had success, which is ultimately the SEC culture? And I lean more towards that side of the equation.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to put it out there that, Penn State's going to have the money to pay this next head coach.
No doubt.
It sounds as if Coach Franklin is going to get a job very soon. If not, this Virginia Tech opening, it sounds like things are close over there. I'm hearing some inklings. So from that standpoint, money's not going to be an issue. If there's a guy that we absolutely love, and that guy is Lane, then we're gonna be able to have the numbers to attract the guy out of there. Yeah. That's the reality. So I don't think that's any of a worry, but the reality is we're gonna have to know who this next coach is. Hopefully it is very soon, because with everything going on, with transfer portal, with NIL, with recruiting, you just want to get a head start on all of these things as quickly and as soon as possible. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this coaching search and see what new names, are buzzing and are coming up. We'll continue to update you guys on.
I'll throw this out there. I think, there's been some buzz about Urban Meyer, but I really do think Urban's still on the table.
Yeah.
I do think Urban's still on the table, in my opinion. And he's one that's, I think, unique as well, right? Because he's never coached in the NIL era. But there's a lot that comes with him in terms of experience and building and resume and flash, and being able to inject him here right now during this part of the season. You can pull him in. He could probably recruit. I don't know the exact rules, but, like, if you hire him, let Terry finish the season. Now you got a head coach in here who's recruiting throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah.
No ties to any other school. Probably helps in the recruiting cycle, get you a head start in the portal. His question mark is does he cover the NIL side, the NIL era? And that's one of those conversations where, all right, do you want to have success here? And that's where you pair him with a really, really good GM that can go handle that side of things and manage the locker room from that side of the equation. I think Penn State has a unique opportunity to really make a splash hire with a unique model that can set a standard, I think, moving forward. When teams are looking for head coaches, if you have the money, you're going to pay a guy who's a football guy, who's a culture guy, and then you're going to bring somebody in here who can handle all of the other noise that comes with today's current landscape in college football.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I love about Urban is the fact that obviously he's been at the NFL level as well, and he knows what that looks like from a building standpoint, from a infrastructure standpoint. I think the faster these college football programs can try to advance themselves to look more like an NFL building, even just from a staff standpoint, from a front office and upstairs standpoint, things of that nature.
Talent evaluation.
Exactly. Talent evaluation, recruiting, all of these things. I think the better the program's going to be, because that's just where we're heading, regardless of whether we want to say it out loud, regardless of whether we want to say that, these kids are still amateurs and things of that nature. The reality is we're heading towards pro sports in college. With the amount of money that's going on, with the NIL and the amount of money that these kids are being paid, they're pros.
Yeah.
We can just go out and say it. These guys are pros. So, like I said, we'll put a cap on that conversation about the coaches. We'll continue to keep you guys updated and continue to, have that talk and that discussion. But we got much more to come on this Ohio State game over at the Shoe. We're here in Philly at Old City Tap House. Really excited to get really into this game, and we're going to go ahead and throw over the commercial.
This is the mark of a fighter. A rich, full-flavored lager with a crisp, refreshing taste. A reward for those with a fighting spirit. You've earned
so
this.
the person should come back as Modelo, or
Modelo, the mark of a fighter.
We are going for all the marbles next
So,
You know the history, and you have felt the roar. But now, you can relive it all.
I think he was looking for a good meal, Italian meal.
Welcome to the Vault on Roar Plus, where every unforgettable Penn State moment lives
do I have to
forever.
do a Modelo read before we do anything else?
If you can get people to believe you're fair,
I think you can probably hit it
that's
at the end.
the whole secret
just
of
say,
coaching.
hey,
Okay.
From black and white grit
Goodbye.
to high def
Throw
glory,
that'll
the
be the
Vault is
second
your
one.
front row seat to the moments that built this tradition and the ones that built you as a fan.
Transition to what? Sorry.
Ohio State game.
Okay.
State game.
It's not just history, it's Penn State history. And it's all right here at Roar Plus. The roar never stops.
This is the mark of a fighter. A rich, full-flavored lager with a crisp, refreshing taste. A reward for those with a fighting spirit. You've earned this, so hold it up high. Modelo, the mark of a fighter.
And we are back at City Tap House in Logan Square in Philadelphia. It is a little bit chilly. I've got my jacket on, but we are here. We are ready. We're here to talk Penn State football. And one thing I really want to talk about right now, because we keep mentioning it, we keep talking about the tradition. We keep talking about the culture of Penn State. I really want to get into what exactly is the DNA of Penn State when we start to talk about it. What exactly, how do we define that, the DNA of Penn State football?
Yeah, I mean, I've been guilty of throwing that around, expecting a lot of people to know exactly what I mean, but
because it's inside you.
It is. It's something you live, breathe, and it gets ingrained in you. But it's again, to me, it goes back to like remembering where you came from, and it, by no means is it being afraid to evolve and challenge and test new barriers and chase. Like by no means. Like I'm all for that. Evolve or die. I've always been that way. But to me, it's understanding where you came from, having respect of what built this program and what foundation ultimately allowed this program to get through some of the toughest times in college sports history for any athletic program. If I could probably not be, that's probably not a stretch. A lot of that came back to like the type of kid, right? And the type of coach and the type of program and culture that you have. Now you can couple that with somebody who's on cutting edge of offensive schemes and recruiting philosophies and different things like that. But at the end of the day, it goes back to me. We talk about this. Best football teams you've ever been around are led by the locker room.
Yeah.
Your 2016 team's a perfect example of that. So at the end of the day, you have to have the right concoction of personality in a locker room that makes everybody else's job easier. And, I think when you watch this team this year, I'm not taking a shot at the locker room, but I'm saying like there could have been some weak points because the collapse just doesn't make sense for the talent that they've had up until this point. So getting back to tough kids who are football players first in this building, and that's the majority of your roster because that they can kind of lead the rest, right? You're going to have a handful of Lions that are leading the herd and leading the pack, and then the sheep will follow pretty quickly if you have the right guys in there. And I think that's getting that from the top down. Head coach, coordinators aligned in that vision. And that's, again, why I say like the Penn State DNA, it's something that I think has been here for so long because there hasn't been a ton of change over the course of its history. And that's something that I think is very valuable, consistency. You talk about the NFL level. I mean, look at the best NFL organizations. They're the ones that have had consistency for the longest.
Absolutely.
So there's something to that.
Yeah, I think, for me, when we talk PSU DNA and what I think of when I hear that, I think of players that really, truly know the culture, know the tradition, know the weight and the gravity of all who came before them. I played linebacker here, obviously, and I think when I first came here, the Sean Lees and the LeVar Arringtons and the Mike Moudys and the Navarro Bowmans, like all these guys are guys that I knew about. They're guys whose shoes I wanted to step into. There are guys, and it's really a tradition, and honestly, we're really talking about a standard of excellence here that I felt coming in, I knew that I needed to uphold. So I think it starts with that. It starts with kids who understand the gravity and the weight of that, of what all those who came before them have come here and done and accomplished. And I think once you start there, you bring in kids who want to carry that legacy, kids who want to add their own spice to that legacy, kids who want to increase that legacy and really increase the standard and raise the standard even more as high as it may be. And then after that, you start looking at the types of players. You're talking smart players. You're talking players who are gritty, players who are tough, players who care so much, players who go about their business the right way. There's so many things. There's so many aspects. Guys who, don't embarrass their family names, that don't get in trouble, who, don't have run-ins with the cops downtown and things of that nature. Just do everything the right way.
And a lot of that leads to winning. And a lot of that leads to winning. Just a quick anecdotal story about that. Like the one thing, and again, not comparing, but like my first training camp under Bill O'Brien was brutal. We did nothing fun. Because he wasn't worried about saving the roster at that point in time. So nothing fun. But the one thing that we did do that I loved was he took a whole afternoon and we went over to Beaver Stadium, into kind of like the evening dusk hours with flashlights and walked around Beaver Stadium. There's a ton of history just in Beaver Stadium, on the walls, different areas, different locations, through the museum, all that stuff. Yep. And he walked us through it and explained everything. And when you kind of heard that from your leader, I was 18, I knew what Penn State was. Right. I understood it, but like just the depth and breadth and taking that time to do that was like, as a player, I was like, wow, like this really, really matters. Yep. Like this is, there's culture, shared values over time. There's culture here that is ingrained and really, really matters. And seeing the guy at the top take that was something that was so impactful for me. And that's why I believe so strongly in, we don't need to run from that. We need to hold that with us and then continue to evolve with it. And to me, that's the Penn State DNA.
100%. I think there's schools out there who recruit kids and the kids come in and they don't really care about the school's history and they're kind of just worried about themselves and what they want to accomplish, what they want to get done. Maybe that's NFL, maybe that's, whatever accomplishments and things they want to get at their position, awards and things of that nature. But I truly do believe that damn near every kid who comes to Penn State really does want to affect the history, really does want to lay their mark from that standpoint and knows about the history and how important it is. And it's just, Penn State's just one of those places. And I think that's just what makes this school so special is, we hold that so dear. You go and you walk around the tailgates and you'll see old fans who are talking about, the 90s and the 2000s and that Orange Bowl back in 06. And, you hear those kinds of things and it's so reminiscent of a great football tradition when the fans, the coach, the players, the community all move as one. And that's what makes Penn State so special. So I think it's going to be really, really important for who we bring in, not only players, but as a coach as well, to continue all of these things, because this is important. And when we talk about Coach Franklin being gone, there's a recruiting impact on that.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Obviously, we're in the NIL age. Not only are you recruiting new players out of high school, but a lot of coaches nowadays have to recruit their own players in their own locker room with this transfer portal and guys going out seeking new opportunities. What kind of an impact has Coach Franklin's departure and really firing led to in our
we've seen it. I mean, there's been some mass exodus from our recruiting standpoint, and that's why I say I think it's really important we get a hire handled here quickly so that we can actually try to fight to get some of that back, and then again get ahead of the portal cycle. Being able to evaluate and get a head start on that is vitally important.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to get your perspective, just because you've been through it when you were here, after your freshman year, and Billy O.B. leaves and takes that Texas job. What was it like for you those, I think it was 11 days when Penn State really had no head coach? What was that like for you as a current player while you were at Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, and we didn't have to worry about playing. You know what I mean? It was crazy. We did not have to worry about playing. Just there's always that shock and awe, the questioning of what's going to be the philosophy, what's going to be the culture. You're so used to one thing, and there's change there associated with it. I think that was probably the most challenging. It's just the change, right? And that's why the quicker you can get to understanding what that change is going to be, the better for all parties involved.
Yeah.
And to your point, especially in today's day and age, there's a lot more options.
Agreed.
We had some options because of the sanctions and all that stuff, but there's a lot more in today's day and age. And frankly, you have to try to quell those and add stability as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think for us, when you talk about recruiting, when you talk about transfer portal, and I've mentioned this before, I truly and genuinely believe that Penn State has really done one of the best jobs of keeping the culture and who they are and the core of what Penn State football is at the center of what we are, and not allowing the NIL and the money and the transfer portal and the recruiting and all the new aspects in the new college football world that we're living in today to affect the culture and who we are as a program. I think if you look at the transfer portal, we look at guys who have left Penn State, it truly is guys that were looking for playing time, who weren't going to get it on our field, which I think is what the transfer portal truly should be about. Should not be about going and making more money, or because I can go get $100,000 more over here, whatever that number is. And from my perspective, I truly think that, keeping that moving forward is going to be very, very important, because as you know, things can get finicky real quick, whether that means the wrong hire or whatever the case may be. I think that's important, that we keep that. And speaking on, transfer portal and NIL and recruiting, Ohio State is one of those teams that is doing it at one of the highest levels, and they've been doing it for quite some time.
An extremely high level. Goes back to what I mentioned with JP, just the culture there. It's similar to us, right? With the type of guys that place and that logo attracts. The brand does sell itself to a large degree, and it's an advantage that we have at Penn State. It's an advantage Ohio State has. And to your point, even when you look at Ohio State in the portal, a lot of their pulls are either young guys, plugs, gaps. They're very strategic with that. And there's a lot of homegrown talent there as well, which is pretty cool. So when you see a program like Ohio State doing it, it's a model to be envious of.
Absolutely. And you look at this prolific Ohio State offense. I mean, you've got guys who are playing at a super level. You got a lot of guys that are also homegrown, guys like Jeremiah Smith, guys like Carnell Tate. I know Julian Sain isn't one of those guys, but my goodness, is he playing at a really, really high level right now. This offense is high octane, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been that way for a very long time. At the quarterback position, you could go back to even Urban's time and maybe say it's, system, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, when you look at the way Julian Sain's playing right now and his age, the fact that you want to talk about a crazy transfer, he was practicing with Alabama during their playoff run last year, and then he ends up at Ohio State in the summer, and obviously the job here as the season kicks off. But look at the stats, completing the football at a very high clip, yards, asked what he's needed to do, taking care of it. For a young kid, man, obviously has a lot of things that help him.
Yeah.
But he's shouldered the load in terms of this offense struggling to run the football, as Tripp mentioned. he shouldered the load in a very, very impressive light up into this point.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes without saying. You guys saw the stats there. I mean, 100 for 124. I mean, do I got to tell you that this kid is accurate? And it's not like he is just, a check down merchant or things of that nature. I mean, he's had a few 300-yard plus games this year. This is a guy who is airing it out. He is being aggressive. He's throwing the ball downfield. And now, obviously, it helps to have characters like Jeremiah Smith, like Carnell Tate down there. We saw Carnell a couple weeks ago absolutely moss 2 defenders where Julian put the ball in only a place Carnell could get it. But the reality is that takes confidence. That takes a ton of skill. That takes a lot of courage to play that way. And he's doing it. And it really seems that as the years continue to go on and on, that Brian Hartline is asking more and more of this kid. He's just seeing how much can he bite off, giving him more and more to bite and seeing just how much of it he can chew. Yeah. And the more they're giving him the bite, the more he's showing that he can chew it.
He's digesting it and doing a great job, and then ultimately putting the product out there. And you mentioned, guys like Jeremiah Smith, Cardell Tate, like they always have guys there. And that's one thing that I'm really interested heading into this matchup. The one thing that I've felt good about when you look at our team, one of the things that I have felt good about has been our secondary.
Yeah.
I still think that they're a very competitive group. Now that bodes the challenge when you look at the flip side of the coin here. Can we stifle Ohio State's running game enough to force it to be that matchup, right? You have to force it to be good.
And we can roll the tape here just so you guys can see what we're talking about here in terms of why we feel like this is such a matchup game between the receivers and the DBs.
Yeah, multiplicity of things here, moving the pocket, play action. And to your point, Julian saying just being a facilitator, taking what they give you. And there's trust in having guys out there that can get yards after the catch too. When you're throwing, you don't have to throw these deep explosive routes. You can throw pitches, curls, some drags, comebacks that turn into 20, 30, 40, 60-yard gains.
Yeah.
And as a quarterback, it's a lot easier to be in the flow of the system as opposed to trying to force explosive plays and force things. Everything starts to open up and it gets a lot easier from my experience.
Yeah, and I mean, when you have receivers like this, like you said, that can take slants to the house, that can take a hitch or a curl, turn, break a tackle, and break it for another 20, that makes your offense just that much easier to go out there and execute. They got a solid tight end also in Max Clare. He's a good player. I don't think he gets enough credit, for the role that he's playing in this offense as well. And then you go, got 2 talented backs, and Bo Jackson and CJ Donaldson. I mean, these guys they're good. They're just, when I look at this team and I watch them play, especially offensively, there's no weakness that I personally see.
Yeah, and there's an identity, right?
Yeah.
There's an identity. And that's what you look for. You're in week 7, 8, 9 of the season, whatever it is with bye weeks. The math's not my strong suit. But at this point in the season, like there needs to be an identity. You need to know who they are, what they're going to be about, and I think Ohio State's done that. They're not running the ball as efficiently as they may have in the past, in previous times, but they have a great quarterback and a great receiving core, and they're running the ball just enough. It's just enough of a threat to open up everything else. You see them working off play action. You see them facilitating the flats, letting these guys make plays, getting the ball to their playmakers in space. Julian's a big part of that. And this team is very, very, very scary. And they've been doing this quietly. Like, that's the crazy thing too, is I was getting prepped for this week and I was just like, man, like I haven't really sat down and like watched a ton of Ohio State up into this week. You know what I mean? And now sitting here and watching it, they've just been quietly getting better and better and better.
Absolutely.
And they're going to be a force to be reckoned with here towards the back half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt that right now, when you look at college football, you look at the AP poll, I believe that they have truly separated themselves as in it be Ohio State, and then there's everybody else. I think you can very clearly say that so far at this point in the season. I'd love to transition to the other side of the ball, because as much as, this is a high-octane offense, they're doing some really, really special things on the other side of the ball. There are about 2 or 3 names that, I'd want to highlight the most. It starts with the leader, and that's Matt Patricia. I played for Matt Patricia in Detroit, a sophisticated defense. And when I first saw this hire, it was one of those hires that I really wanted to myself. Is he going to be able to get college kids to pick up this type of defense? It's sophisticated. There are a lot of checks. There's a lot of learning there. And obviously he had to do it in a short period of time. But man, when I see the way these kids are executing this defense right now and what he's got this defense doing from a look standpoint, from exotic standpoint, from confusing the quarterback pre-snap, playing with their keys and things of that nature, and also playing fast, I mean, he's done an absolutely incredible job. And not only that, but adjusting to the college environment. As you know, from NFL to college, there's a different approach. They're kids, they're young men who are still growing up. NFL, obviously, they're grown men. So a lot of adjustments for Matty P to make, and man, he's handled it, I mean, beautifully.
Well, I think a glaring example of that is we've talked about our defense, right? Bringing Jim Knowles over from Ohio State. Jim Knowles runs a complicated scheme.
Yep.
And they've had him for a few years. So talk about that. Like, do you think that that's easier? And you're seeing us on the flip side struggling to really adapt, I think, to that.
Yeah.
And really truly grasp everything that goes into the pre-snap communications and post-snap execution consistently. Do you think that there's something to being able to go and get a guy like Matty Patricia who's going to bring in another complex offense, because to those specific position rooms, it's like, oh, okay, this is similar to what we've been doing. Just he calls it blue and we called it red last year. You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a great question and it's hard to say, but what I do know I can say for a fact is that Ohio State has a player on that defense that Penn State just does not have. And that's Caleb Downs. I mean, this guy might very well be the number one defensive prospect going to this draft. There's absolutely nothing that he can't do. This kid is special. This kid is smart. This kid lines up in all different types of places. The body control, the open field tackling, the coverage ability, the way he finds turnovers. This kid is really, really special. I cannot say this enough. This is Josh Downs' little brother. Josh, if you guys do not know, is one of the wide receivers for the Indianapolis Colts, another great player. But, I mean, Caleb is outstanding, and he's been doing it all for this defense, as well as another guy that I'd love to highlight, and that's Arvell Reese, a number 8 for them, who lines up at middle linebacker, who lines up on the edge. Some people compare him a little bit to Abdul Carter because he has that speed effect and just that speed that you don't really see at the linebacker position that just makes you special. He's got that. So, like I said, they've got some special players right now doing really, really good things for this defense. So I don't want that to go unnoticed as much as we talk about the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, the defense, I think, has given the offense time to develop into what it's going to be.
Yep.
Because when thinking back to some of the game that I did watch was the Texas game. It was a sloppy football game. But the defense on both sides of the ball for Texas and Ohio State was very, very impressive. And when you have a defense that's playing at such an efficient clip, it goes back to that complementary football conversation.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately Penn State's going to have to play a flawless complementary football game today in order to be in the fight.
Yep.
Ohio State's been doing it for 7 weeks.
Yeah, they have.
Which is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
So
they absolutely have. And you mentioned it, they're going to have to play flawless. I mean, maybe not flawless. We know that no football game is perfect no matter what, but they're going to have to play critical mistake free. And there's a difference between making mistakes, having mental errors, and having critical mistakes in critical moments. I mean, this is the type of team where if we have those types of things, they are going to take advantage, and it's going to kill us. And it will be the reason why we don't win, or the outcome is not what we want.
Yeah, we're going to have some of those, I think, go our way.
No
as
doubt.
Opposed to, like we're going to have to be hunting those as opposed to playing defense to not make those. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, man. I'd love to throw it over to Trip over at Ohio State, man, for our injury report and our field report. Trip, how are we?
Doing well. Great show so far, fellas. And I'll add one more thing to that. Penn State, if they can be in this game and hang around, maybe it is a low possession game. You can establish that running game like they did at Iowa. And Ohio State's played a slow tempo so far this year. Ryan Day's kind of been the conversation this week for them is they're trying to manage the long season. It's a marathon of a season. Make sure they're fresh when they get to the college football playoff. If you can stay in the game, what's been the problem for Penn State? Every time it seems like the offense or the special teams makes a big play, then you can't come up with a stop on defense. Well, maybe the defense makes a big play, and then the offense isn't able to cash in. It's putting all those elements together and playing complementary football. The team arrived here at Ohio Stadium about 15 minutes ago. Drew Aller and Caden Saunders, 2 Ohio products who are out for the season, are on the trip. But because of an NCAA waiver, it does not count against the travel roster. It's great to see Drew back here in his home state. He's been around the team as a leader and supporting Ethan Grunkemeyer, who plays just miles away from home today. But it's the story behind Ethan Grunkemeyer. Jackson Smolik is officially out for today's game, something that those of us around the team suspected after seeing the injury against Iowa, and that means Beckham Kritza is the backup quarterback for Penn State today. Kritza has barely practiced this year because he's been injured for much of the season. So that is the big injury note today for Penn State. Should something happen to Ethan Grunkemeyer, should Andy Kotelnicki want to go to that 2-quarterback offense system, it'll be Ethan Grunkemeyer and then Beckham Kritza as the backup here on the road against the number 1 team in the nation, against the number 1 defense in the nation here in Columbus on just a gorgeous morning for college football.
Wow, that is quite the update, man. Sure, we really appreciate that. And one of the things that you mentioned, that's really interesting that I spoke to Hack, earlier this week, after watching that Iowa game, is when at the quarterback position, there were moments where I just felt like it was an experiment. I don't remember what it was, but it was like 7 or 8 plays in a row where, Jackson and Ethan were going back and forth. I mean, it was Ethan starting this play, then the next play Jackson, the next play Ethan again. Honestly, it was something I've really never seen before. So,
yeah.
Like you said, Beckham not starting, but, being the backup today, a guy who, has been hurt and hasn't played a ton. I know me personally, I would love to see Grunk just take all the snaps, them to give him, all the experience that, he's going to need at the end of the day in an adversity-filled game like this one, as I'm sure it'll be.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, feel for Grunk. Getting into it as a starter, you go to Kinnick, get a bye week, go to the shoe, and then you're going to have Indiana at home after. Man, this kid's got a slate to start the year. But if you get through this, man, you can get through anything, I think.
That's true.
And to your point, I think as a quarterback, you want to try to get in the flow, both good and bad. And if it's disruptive, I think extends what the floor can be. And if you're just let them stay in it and see how they react and see how they fight, then you get to see a little bit more of the ceiling if they can get out of some of those tough situations.
Yeah.
For him, and again, for this offense, when you're talking about complementary football, you need some consistency at that position. That's the only thing that I balk at when we talk about the 2-quarterback system. Are there some things that could potentially present issues for Ohio State? Yes. But does the risk outweigh the reward or vice versa? That's the question that ultimately the coaching staff has to decide. But tall task for whomever's lined up behind center today.
Well, guys, this is the question that I ultimately have for you two, and that is, what is your predictions for today's game? And yes, I am asking for scores as well.
You're asking for scores as well. That's tough. You put me on the spot.
We
got to get Tripp back in here for a second. But
20.5-point underdog in Las Vegas right now, Penn State is.
Yeah. I 31-14. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
31-14, 38-14, something like that.
Yeah.
Might be able to sneak 21. Ohio State, I think gets it done.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't be surprised if this is a bit of a slugfest if we get some things going our way. Noon kick, there's a lot that goes into it. I wouldn't be surprised.
Upset alert?
No, I'm
upset alert?
I'm not going to say. No, I'm not saying upset alert. But I gave you like a what was it, 14-30? I don't know.
No, I mean we talked about it. I think for us to keep this a game, to keep it close, to even be able to be in a realm for this to be an upset, I think that starts with being able to keep Ohio State's offense off the field. And in order to do that for us, we're going to have to continuously hand Catron this rock, and it's going to have to look good from the running the ball standpoint.
It's going to be sloppy
offensively for us, in order to make that happen. Because as much as I love our secondary, our DB room, there's just no doubt about it that this wide receiver room and this quarterback that Ohio State is, they're doing some special stuff.
It's a tall task, but again, it starts with, can we be something that we haven't done up to this point, which is be stout enough in the run game, right?
Yeah.
Because if we allow them to run the football efficiently, then it plays into what Tripp was talking about with Ryan Day, being able to possess the football, keep our offense off the field, limit our opportunities. So it starts with that, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to live and die with the fact that maybe Julian Sayin makes 2 or 3 mistakes.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's how you stay in the football game. And you have to say our good is as good as their good, right? You have to be confident in that.
Yeah, we're going to have to play this game the way we played it last year. And I thought, last year we did a good job of trying to stay on the field and the time of possession.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of games like that last year in general where we dominated time of possession. We kept the ball out of, opposing offensive hands. It's going to have to be that type, of game. And then, you call Ethan's number in those big moments and he comes up big, whether that's play action, whether that's a shot down the field. Our receivers are going to have to make damn near every play that comes their way. Because I think this is the type of game where, like we both talked about, you got to lean on the run game a ton. And then when it's Ethan's time, they got to just go out there and execute it here and there. It ain't going to be a each and every play thing, but it's got to be in here and there. And when it comes, it's got to happen.
Yeah,
it's got to happen. With catchable balls, with made catches, with making 50-50 contested catches and things of that nature. It's really important, man. I think we lost Trip a little bit, man, but we appreciate you, Trip, and your input here, man. We gave you our predictions. I didn't give mine, actually.
Yeah, you didn't give a score. You were staunch.
I'm going to go 31-7.
Yeah, 31-7, yeah.
I just the way this defense is playing right now, Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, the DBs are playing well. It's a suffocating defense. You saw them against Texas, who, we went into this season, feeling like Arch Manning and that Texas offense was going to, go crazy. And we saw that defense go out there and really have a master class. So I expect them to continue doing what they're doing. I expect, guys like Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate to have big days and things of that nature. Now, I don't think we're going to make it easy for them, but I think they're the type of receivers that no matter what, when they go out there, they get theirs. So it's going to be that type of a game, man. So, it is what it is. We're going to see what happens today. I think it's going to be an exciting watch regardless. And it's Penn State, Ohio State. And for us, each and every year, as we know, that's our rival. There's nobody I personally have more pride in beating than Ohio State. Not Michigan, not Michigan State, not, I'm a Jersey guy, not Rutgers. I don't take any more pride in beating any other Big Ten team than Ohio State for me personally. So excited for it, man. We appreciate you guys for tuning into the show. This is the Penn State pregame show sponsored by Modelo, your official import beer of Penn State football. You must be 21 or older, and please, we ask that you drink responsibly. We'll be back to you guys next week. We appreciate you guys and love you, Nittany Nation.
This is the mark of a fighter. A rich, full-flavored lager with a crisp, refreshing taste. A reward for those with a fighting spirit. You've earned this, so hold it up high. Modelo, the mark of a fighter.
We are going for all the marbles next year.
You know the history, and you have felt the roar. But now, you can relive it all.
I think he was looking for a good meal, Italian meal.
Welcome to the Vault on Roar Plus, where every unforgettable Penn State moment lives forever.
If you can get people to believe you're fair, I think that's the whole secret of coaching.
From black and white grit to high-def glory, the Vault is your front row seat to the moments that built this tradition and the ones that built you as a fan. It's not just history, it's Penn State history. And it's all right here at Roar Plus. The roar never stops.
This is the mark of a fighter. A rich, full-flavored lager with a crisp, refreshing taste. A reward for those with a fighting spirit. You've earned this, so hold it up high. Modelo, the mark of a fighter.